B'shir Savimai V'Rabbi, the Rosh Yeshiva Shlita, the Anhalas HaYeshiva, the Chashuv Rabbeim, Chashuv Rabbanim, Talmidei HaYeshiva, past and present, and possibly some future. I'd like to discuss the shtickle in the union of Tam and Beish. The Gemara and Hakainis, and the Nehem and Beis. We have the Gemara of Yeshua, Dalad Devarim Ha'isai Sampatim De Adam V'Chayiv De Shemayim. There are four things that there's Patim De Adam V'Chayiv De Shemayim. And one, we're not going to go through all four of them, but one of them we're talking about in our sugya is Hakaife Kamaso Lefnei Leika. If you told your friends Kaima, a stalk in front of the fire, that the Gemara in the beginning says we're talking about a case where it's a ruach sheina mitzuya, and therefore it's pater b'nei adam, but l'maisi chayv b'nei shemayim. Rav Ashi on Unvav says, Tomen itma mishum neshavi tomen beish. We're talking about Tomen. It's a Tomen itma because he made it Tomen beish. What does kaifif have to do with Taman? So Pashit L'chayra, when you put the sheets, like Rashi says, he spread sheets all over it, to hide it, to cover it, it bent it down. So you really don't know what's under there. Or even if you do know, let's say right now, kaifif. That's why the lashon kaifif could be touched up as Taman, because kaifif he covered it, so it's not the thing. Not the thing that we thought it's there, possibly. The Chazon Ish clears a shaila. What is the din of regular Tomen? Is Tomen be'esh itself chayiv b'dei shemayim? Right? The tzad to say it's chayiv is because l'maisi you mafsid your friend, so you have to go ahead and pay for the b'dei shemayim because you were mafsid him. Or maybe it's different over here, the Chazon Ish says. In a case of this case, you see a hefsid coming, you see a fire that's coming to destroy a property, and you go ahead and cover it over, and that's going to pater the mazik from having to pay the nizik. So you're talking being mafsitin. And even like Taisvis, like the Gemara says, Vaita, and the Taisvis explains in Kasise, I covered it over that it shouldn't burn so fast. You try to help the person, that it shouldn't be damaged. But explains the Chazon Ish, but l'maisi, you shouldn't be doing something that might cause a hefsid to the friend, and that's what happened at the end. The whole thing burnt down, and now the mazik isn't going to have to pay him because it's Taman, and Memela, the one who covered is chayiv b'dei shemayim. So that's because you caused the hefsid to your friend. But what about a regular case of Taman? You're right, there was possibly a pshia that broke out, and that's why the fire broke out and burnt down the goloi, and it also burnt down Taman. You weren't mechavin for doing anything. Shall you? So it could be, in that case, he says a svara like this. Heicha dechayva Torah l'shalem. In the case where the Torah patted you for paying, let's just say goloi, upatre b'davim min advarim, and the Torah says you're pater on something, Taman, kamo Taman be'eish or kalim b'bar, pater gam b'dinei shemayim. Maybe you take a pater b'dei shemayim. What's the svara? So the husband the Chazon Ish is like this. The Chazon Ish l'shitaso, he says he doesn't learn like the Rashi in Gittin that the reason of the chiyuv b'dei shemayim is because you caused prani should come to a person who caused the hefsid to a Jew, another Jew, but it's taka din tashlumin. There's dinim down here, and there's dinim and shemayim. Grama. Let's take a case of grama. Grama is putter down here. B'dei adam, you can't be chayiv because grama, you're chayiv if you mazik, not if you cause the hezek. That's shaykh to say, but in shemayim, they mun you even for causing a hezek. Now, in our case, where we're talking about Tom and Be'esh, the components to be mechayiv are there. He did the same ma'isa when he burnt down his Galoi and Taman. It's the exact same ma'isa, and the Torah came along and said you pater for it. So if the Torah paters you and holds that we're not responsible for Taman, even though bidine mazik, very simple, it would be chayiv. The kalim, the animal's walking and it falls into a bar. There's shar v'lo adam chamav v'lo kalim. It has the same thing. The kalim should be chayiv too. The Torah comes along and says you pater. There's no din tashlumin. The gzeiros akosef. It could be b'dei shemayim. You have the same tour because b'dei shemayim it's a chiv tashlumin. That's what the Chazon Ish is learning. He's learning it's a chiv tashlumin. It's not a chiv like Rashi says because you were mafsid somebody. Now we're going to give you an einish. Okay, that's the way. Right now we're going to say and learn Rashi. The Gemara Lefi the Chazon Ish. Looking at this Rashi Toman Itmar. Rashi says, what's the case? Shekisa kamas chaveru b'sadinin. Like we said, he covered the kama of your friend with sheets. Kisharod the leka etzlo. When he saw the fire, it's coming, it's about to burn it down. And he's not the one who's made the fire. And he made it tamen by covering it. The garment goram lahafs is chaveru as a nizik, and he's garment lahafs. So Rashi says, he didn't go ahead and make the fire. And let's say he made the fire. Like you saw the Bicha Shmuel, he brings down from Shmuel Landa, that, what do you mean? It's a Pasha Zach. At the end of the day, it's Taman. If it's Taman at the end of the day, who cares if the guy who made the fire covered it or some other stranger covered it? It's Pashit is a Ptur Taman. And he asked the mice that should even say the case of if the person himself did it, he'll tell you at least Nayach Chayiv B'dei Shemayim, not B'dei Adam. You're only Chayiv B'dei Shemayim. So that's his kash. L'chayra, we have the same. That's adiyak. L'chayra, it should come along and say anyway. Rashi didn't even have to get involved in anything. Just says somebody covered it. What do you have to come along to talk about being covered? This guy covered it, not that guy covered it. What do you want? So the truth is, I thought to answer this kasha based on the Gemara Vaita. So I left the Ma'amakim over there. The Suleka v'ha'ika. The Gemara talks about that it's not only 4 cases that you're pater b'dei adam, that you're chayiv b'dei shemayim and pater b'dei adam. There's plenty of cases. So why did Yeshua say these cases? Because these have a chiddush to them. What's the chiddush of Taman? The case, according to Rav Ashi, is that the Gemara says the chiddush of Yeshua's picked on this case is because he tried to save the guy. He figured if I cover it over, even if I had good kavanah, that's what we said at Taisvis, even if he has good kavanah to cover it, but Lamais at the end of the day a hefsed happened, you're chayiv b'dei shemayim. And that's the chiddush of why he picked on these 4 cases. So that's why Rashi's telling you that. Rashi's telling you, based on the Gemara, it has to be that somebody else covered it. Because Avada, if the person who started the fire covered it, then why is he covering it? He's covering because he doesn't want to pay to that guy. That's Pashit, you be Chayiv Dei Shemayim. That's what Chayiv Dei Shemayim is, for being Mazik. So what is it? That's why Rashi says, we're talking about somebody else came along and covered it. Okay, that's the way to answer it. And, okay, let's leave it at this. But when you open up the Birchas Shmuel, and you see in Simon Beis, Hitaka brings down Rav Shmuel Landau's kasha. And he says, in seven bays, he like come on the time of bays, Isa, but the varm ha'isa, some part of the other Mechayiv de Shemayim. Umukil Hashem beGemara, the Matachosh of Shom, Akayv Kamash Chaveu, if they had Leka, Hainu gon the Shavya Tomen Beish. He made it Tomen. Upirish Rashi's out. Kegain Shekisa Kamas Chaveu Besadinim Kishor the Leka Etzlo, V'hu lo Sholach Esa Be'era. V'Shavya Tomen Beish. V'Goram Lahafzes Chaveu Lipotes Amad. V'Shamati Mishmei the Hagoyin Agodu of Shmuel Landau. Zechin Tzadik Lacham. Shehuksha the Loma lo Pirish Rashi V'Busa Gedayla. Maybe he means the Rebusa Gadayla, if the guy himself covers it, even though he made the fire and he made the p'tur, like throwing the thing Rosh Hagag and then pulling the thing away that you see a putter. So maybe that's what he means why it's a Chiddush Gadayla, Rebusa Gadayla, Afilu Amavi Ba'atzmo, Aso, Tomen, Gam came putter the Adam. The Hari Boru, he says, it's Pashit, there's no Shaila, the Gam Bezeha, Ifin, Ba'atzmo, So, Tomen, they call Makan putter the Adam. It's the same tour. It's pata because it's tamen. At the end of the day, it has gzeis akasav at the saif for avi tamen beish. So you see the Bircha Shmuel, he accepted this kasha and he says, the Rashi behechach lefarish dafka beechad the acher hoyimizkas amachase the nira loyim et machapatra Torah eish al tamen who rak miten chiv tashlumin. He says, and he learns it out, and he brings down Reb Chaim later. Reb Chaim says later on that the din of Lo Yishmerena is no name dafkalin in Chiyav Momen, elagam le'inin sheyachshuv mazik for Rosh Klapi Shemaya. There are two dinim in the din of mazik. There's a Chiyav that mazik has for tashlumin. If you damage something, you have to pay. And there's also a Chiyav tashlumin, a Chiyav that Lo Yishmerena, that you're a Russia for doing it. So even though the Torah says the Bircha Shmuel, says Reb Chaim, that even though the Torah comes along and says you have a P'tur Tomen Be'esh, you have a P'tur Kalim by a bar, that's only midin the Mazik. But Legabe a Russia, an Issa that you went ahead and you did a hezek to your friend, that Yichayib De Shemayim. That's a Chiyuv B'dei Shemayim, and that didn't change. So he says, so now he explains, so let's Ferois and Rashi. So what's the Pshat in Rashi now? So Rashi says like this. Al Karchach Nira, that Torah Potra Tomen Be'esh, Mikom Mokum Netzrak Midin Tashlumin. Al Karchach Lo Motzu Rashi Zal Lefarish Ba'ifin Shem Mavir Atzmo Osa Tomen Be'esh. We can't be talking about where the Mava Atzma went ahead and covered it over the pater himself. And he's chayiv b'dei shemayim. The Im Kain, why did the Gemara need a Lama Hutzcha Gemara l'chayiv b'dei shemayim al masha also tamen? Ha'afilam ha'yatamen mikaydem. Even if it was tamen from before, and you make a fire, what happens? It burns down tamen. You're still chayiv b'dei shemayim according to the Bircha Shmuel. He argues the Chazon Ish. He says that it's pashut. There's a chayiv b'dei shemayim if you burn down tamen, because even though you putter b'dinei mazik, but you chayiv mitzad the fact that there's that you did an avera, you did a rishis. So that's why Rashi had to say somebody else came along and covered it, because without that, of course, the first guy was chayiv anyway. Even if it would have started off tamen, it would have been chayiv. And he says, he told Reb Chaim this, and Reb Chaim here said it in the words, Lo Yishmerena, Havi Isser, and of course, from there you know what the answer is, the two dinim. So, the Bircha Shmuel, he didn't go for our Dichu in the Gemara. I think you have to work out the Shakvetaya according to the Beinish Feinstein exactly. V'suleka v'ikal. We had a shtickle taina. I think to be masbid the Beinish Shmuel, we could learn that that's Gufa. He's learning that Chiyuv B'dei Shemayim is the way, like Rashi. That the Chiyuv B'dei Shemayim is mitzad the din that you're a Rasha for Mazik, not a Chiyuv Mammon. Right? The Chazon Ish had a taina. He said if it's a chiv mammon and mazik, and just like it has all the components of being mechayiv, yet we're potter from tamin, we're potter from tamin, we're potter from kalim babar. Even though we don't know why the Torah patted you, it gave you this patur. Since it's a din in the bezdin, it would be chayiv, but the Torah patted you. Maybe klapei shmaya too. When they paskin dead dinim of chiv mammon, there is no chiv of tamin, even klapei shmaya. But if you learn, like Rashi, that it's an einish, that it's the einish comes to a person because he's mafsid his friend, so it's true. But they weren't machayiv you. But you were mafsid your friend, the Torah was going to get you. How do you get out of that hezek? How do you get out of not getting pulverized by the Beinish Feinstein? You pay off whatever you damaged him. So there's a chiyuv klapei shmaya to pay off to save yourself from pranius. But your einish is pranius, resha, that you're the mazik of causing damage and resha to the friend. So it comes out, that would be then also the machlokes then, the Chazon Ish and the Bechish Shmuel, that if Tomin is chayiv, Sam Tomin is chayiv or not, is totally on what the Chiv Dei Shemayim is. Is Chiv Dei Shemayim a Chiv Tashlumin or is a Chiv Einish? It's Nogea to, and Gradi you get rid of the Einish by paying it off. But the Etzem, your Chiv is to get an Einish. It's Nogea to Tvisa, if you see the K'tais in Simon Chav Ches, if there's Shaykh Tvisa, that's only if it's a Moministic then. If that's in Yechayiv Chabim Shmaya in Mominis, then okay, then they can mon it. But if it's Chadiz, you're getting an einish, you want to pat yourself by paying your way out, it's not Shaykh Tfisa, it's not negayah to you, it's negayah to me. And the Me'iwi you have on Daf Nun Vav, he holds your apostle Edis. So if you're doing a Resha, just Taman Aveira, that's not a Chiv Mominis, you're not apostle Edis. But the Me'iwi holds, so he argues on Rashi, now we have a Rishon at least on the Chazon Ish's side, the Me'iwi holds that the Aveira is a Chiyav Mammon Din. This din Klapei Shmai is a Chiyav Mammon Din when it's an Einish B'dei Shemayim, when it's a Chiyav B'dei Shemayim, and Memela you'd be Puzzle Le'edus because you're a Russia D'Chomas. You're a Russia of Mammon. Masha Ein Kain, if you learn like Rashi, that it's not a Russia D'Chomas. You did an Aveira. Gradi, you don't want to get Einshim, pay that guy what he's being mafsid. So then it wouldn't be Pasla Edis. That would be possibly the way to explain this. Now, the Chazon Ish himself, if he'd be maskim to the diak. Okay, we already with Daich that maybe there's no diak, but the Bechish Shmuel did hold there's a diak. So now, if the Chazon Ish held there's a diak too, then there's a big kasha in the Chazon Ish from the Rashi we just said. Because according to Chazon Ish that says that als tomen ba'eish yapata. Because if a fire just breaks out and it's tomen, there's no chiyuv altogether. The Torah was only mechayiv b'dei shemayim when you come along and you make, and you make it tomen and you're mafsid your friend. That's the only time mechayiv b'dei shemayim. But there's no difference yet between if the person himself does it, who made the fire, who was potter out tom and even klapei shemaya, and now by covering up the thing that he mafsid his friend, he is chayiv b'dei shemayim on the thing that was goloi and became tamon, or if somebody else covers it. So why, according to him, did Rashi pick on a case if he's masking to the diak of the Bechish Shmuel and doesn't use ateret? Why does he pick on the case that somebody else covered? Again, that's not such a big kasha on the Chazon Ish because he agrees that Rashi doesn't learn the Chiyav Einish B'dei Shemayim the way he does. He agrees that Rashi learns that the Chiyav B'dei Shemayim is Alts Einish. So Rashi Taka would hold that Alts Tomen Be'esh, you're regularly Chayiv budget because you're mafsid your friend and you do the Aveira of Russia. Excuse me. That's the Chayra, what we could say at this moment. Again, this is all assuming that we can understand that covering sheets over, putting sheets over on top of the kama and everything is considered tama. But that's something itself I want to clarify. In English, for sure, we have two different words. I thought in Hebrew we have two. There's a word called kisuye, covered, and there's a thing called tamen, hidden. Not everything not everything covered is hidden, right? If you put on top of the clock over there so you don't see the time your jacket, we know exactly what's under there. It's covered. It's not hidden. Let's put a glass sheet on top of it. What do you say about that? Is that tamen? You can see right through it. The Beinish Feinstein, he says at the end, he thinks the house is not considered tamen because of all the windows, especially here. But that's what, or let's take something even better. Let's take a haystack. A haystack. Do we think inside things are tamen? You know what's inside the haystack? I can tell you what's inside the haystack. Hay. The second layer of hay. Let's say there's no clay mariga. Okay, let's talk about a regular case of haystacks with hay. Are the haystacks inside any shaila that's been tamen on them? They're just covered. They're not hidden. You have an orange. Orange have nice gesunte peels on them, and the orange gets burnt up. So you can tell the guy, sorry, I'm going to pay you for the peel, but the orange was tamen, right? No bar das is going to tell you that it's shaykh to say that it's tamen. It's not tamen. So covered and tamen could be two different things. If you're going to say that, then maybe you could take a chilik and Rashi right here. You could say, well, if the guy himself comes along and puts the sheets over it, he knows exactly what's under there. He covered it. He didn't hide it. So that's why he'd be chayiv if he puts the sheets down. I know we said, we started off, that's a davar pashut. What's the difference? Who covers it? At the end of the day, there's a p'tur tamen. But maybe when you yourself cover it, there's no tamen here. It's only mechusa. And there's no p'tur. Masha'ain came when somebody else comes along and covers it over. You have no idea, especially since, again, the words are kaifif kom masai. It doesn't look the same. It's not like you take a bunch of haystacks, right? They all look the same and you put a blue tarp on one of them. So, okay, I could see over there, it looks just like all of them. We know exactly what's under there too. But we're talking about stalks. The stalks are growing up. The kaima, you put it on, hakaifif kamaso. That's why the Brisa uses that lashon. Reb Shiur used the lashon hakaifif kamaso. When somebody else put it on, it sunk down, it bent down. So when the fire is coming, say, hey, maybe under there's a pile of rocks, maybe some wood, maybe who knows what's under there. Nothing to do with the haystack, nothing with the stalks that are growing. There's a spot in the middle of the field. So it would be considered tamen when somebody else does it. Maybe that could be a mahalach of what's going on. And I would borrow words from the Shita. I don't know, you saw the Shita B'Shem Ra'ah at the end. Question is how you understood this. He's going on a different point. We'll have to explain what he's going on. He's explaining how come you pay for the mokum of the Klei Mariga, you pay for Tfuah. But his lashon, he says, we see, okay, Roy Makan Kalim Mali Tfuah, Mchitim Samasarim, V'dava Yadua Lakol, V'akol Saivim came, the Amurim Shebeseichel Lo Choshev Tamen. That much at least he does say. However, you're going to teach the first part that everybody knows it, but definitely everybody that knows haystacks have hay in them, it's not called tamen. The Chol Mi Sharoya Gadish Al Chitim, this is my words. Anybody who sees a Gadish Al Chitim, Yodu Aloi, Api Shlo Roa Manos and Tachas Kalipas Rishayna, even though you don't know what's on the top shell, on top, the first layer, Yodu a Lakol. And everybody's savor that it's not called tamen. That's like we explained. That's a chayra, a possible hezbollah, what's going on. And according to that, then Rashi B'dafka took when somebody else covers it. But Lamaisa, the sugya vaita on Samach Aleph and the Beis really needs a big hezbollah. First, Grada, I want to cheat and take a little diak from the Mishnah. If you have the Mishnah on Samachalaf and Bay says, Hamalikas Agodish, Vayabo Kalim, the Dolkel, they got burned. For Yehuda, Aimem, Shalim Masha B'Seicha. You pay inside, he doesn't have a P'tur Taman altogether. You only pay for a Godish of Chitim and Sairim. So, how do you learn Rashi? I mean, how do you learn the Mishnah? Does the Mishnah say Godish al Chitim? Is it a suffix? You pay for the cheaper one, whatever it is. So Rashi comes along and tells us clearly, Im Chitim, Chitim, Sarim, Sarim. You're paying for a Godish full. There's no question what we're talking about over here. It's a full Godish. What does Rashi want? Im Chitim, Chitim, Sarim, Sarim. Very good. That's exactly what the Mishnah said. He's telling you that you pay for a full Godish, full of Chitim, full of Sarim. It is klar what is here. Everybody knows what's there. Now, what's the problem? The problem is the very end of this Gemara. On Samachalaf base, 4 lines on the bottom, there's a brisa, Ton Rabbanon. Hamalik has a Godish v'yaba Kalim. If you light the Godish and the inside was Kalim, lighted obviously from the other guy's property, from your property. Again, because he doesn't hold this a P'tur Tama. You only pay for the value of the Godish. But you look at the space where the Kalim were burnt up as if it was full of Tvua. It was full. It was a full Godish. Now, for sure what I'm saying, what did I say? I said, well, the Chitim in the Godish are only covered. They're not Toman. The Kalim are Toman. So now, you pay for the Chitim because they're not covered. You don't pay for the Kalim because they are covered. Why do you pay for the spot that's inside, the space of the Kalim as if there's Chitim there? You didn't burn Chitim. What's the Chiyuv? So, be'emes, everybody needs to be masbeh this, just sounded a little shver the way I'm saying it. Chazon Ish himself is the kasha, even though I don't think he holds like what I'm saying, this chiluk. He says, I think you also have the copy, Rayin Makam Kalim Kilu Ain't Tvua. He says, Va'afal Gav, the Saif lo nisfa Tvua b'Makam HaKalim. The mice at the end of the day, you didn't burn Tvua in the place where the Kalim were. Va'Kalim shenisfafu harahein tamen. And as far as the Kalim, that Toman, you know why you pay? Because the value of the Tvua that's in the Kalim, whatever amount it is, that's not Toman. That you see. Where do you see it? How do you see it? So I was saying, because, of course, you see a whole Godish. We know we know what's inside. No. He says, listen, just like the inside bundles, sheaves are not considered tamun, kaven dehe magulim bachutz. He says because they're recognizable outside. When you're looking at a haystack, you see from the outside what it is. You have no suffix, like we said. You see a haystack. You see the kalim from the outside. You see mamish a haystack. It looks like a haystack. It's shaped like a haystack. It has hay like a haystack. It's a haystack. And guess what's in it? Haystacks. But he says even the kalim be'etzem on nika b'chutz, because you see from the big bump that there's something there. But you think that tvua. The thing that's toman is the value that's extra on the kalim, because that you don't see from the outside. The only thing you see from the outside is a haystack full of hay. So you know you have $100 haystack over here, and that's what you know. That's golem from nikim b'chutz. That's why I'm not so sure he agrees with what I was saying, because I was saying toman and mechusa. He might agree that if you cover over a sheet on top of this haystack, so you don't know it's a haystack from looking on the sheet on the outside, it could be he would hold that that's considered taman for the whole haystack. then he'll have to come on and learn the answer Rashi, like we said before, because of the Gemara Vaita. But looking at a haystack, when you see a haystack in front of you, what do you see? You see a haystack worth $100 of wheat. Oh, when you open it up and you find out that inside there's $100, there's $100, and then another $500 of kalim in it, that part's tummy. But the value of $100 that you saw from the outside. That's the chiyuv. You're not looking at the min, as the Shiva will also explain. You're looking at the shivui, the value of what's there. Okay, so that's the way Chazon Ish learns it, and he says it's nikir v'chutz. You're looking on the outside. You could see what's inside. In the Dibris, in Ha'aretz Tzadik Gimel, Simon Pei Tes, that's the end of Chelik Beis, the Ha'aretz over there on Baba Kama. Simon Tzadik Tes, Tzadik Gimel, I'm sorry. Simon Pei Tes, Ha'aretz Tzadik Gimel. Says, Ryan Makam Kalim, Kiyuhu Malay Tfua. V'nimtza, Sha'af L'chacham HaPeitrin Tomah Be'esh. Even though Chacham Pata Tomah Be'esh, Mishalim al kapanim shiva tvua afilu hayusham. Even if they b'shiva tvua shay im hayusham, if they were there aren't any, but you pay the shiva of what's there. L'chuura, so he starts off with the Chazon Ish's reason. L'chuura hatam mishum dal shiva the tvua hu giloi hagoli v'lo mashkechinan al hamina. Again, the shiva of the tvua, that's goli. A haystack has $100 worth of hay right there. We don't care about the min. El al shiva hadava the sachze nigla the hayisran hu tama. Whatever is after that, that's all hidden away. But what the haystack itself is there, that's mamish nigla. That's what he starts off saying. But then he has avalnias daiti nira tamache. See, there's a little problem. We have to analyze the way the Chazon Ish is looking at it, that he looks at it from the outside, it's one thing. Now, we all understand that if you have a great big log and there's no way to say when the outside of the log gets burned, the inside of the log is tumbled. You see the whole log. It's mamish, the whole thing. So that's why when you see from the outside, you see the inside. You see the whole thing. Because it's all one shtick. But it's not so simple to look at a haystack and say that the top layer and the second layer and all the third layers are all one thing. Could be, you could look at it that way, but maybe the point is, no, it's very possible. You see, you can separate it, you can do it, it's a different thing. So it's not so simple. But if one chunk, Vada makes sense, that if you have one chunk, there's no way to say that the whole thing is Taman. It's not the top, it's not Taman. That is Goli. The whole thing, it's one shtick. So the Shiva says, though, he wants to learn, I believe he still comes on to the Shivui, that you see the Shivui is klar, but he says, this that the inside tvua has a din golui. It's not because it's all one chunk. It's not. Ella mitam yedualo yedia berura mamish. There's a yediyah. There's a yediyah like raya, as if you see it, because you know it, not because you see it. The Chazon Ish is saying, you see the outside, you see what's on the inside. You see it. No, you have a yediyah. That yediyah is enough. Is yediyah, like the Rashiva says. A yediyah is like you have the Gemara in Shvu Islam Adalit. The Gemara goes ahead and says, the pasuk says, who aid Yoda Ora, right? He sees or he knows. How do you know? You didn't see. How do you know? But what? Chazakas and things tell you. The Gemara says, "Acher gama hocha ben agamalim biyadua shezeh harga." It's yadua. It's a yediyah is like a riyah. If you know something stark, then that's exactly like the riyah that I could see it. Now, that's one case, he says. He says he even brings down the Gemara in Yavamas. And of course, he says that there's no way that the din Taman should be any starker and more mechuyev than a din of Eidus. If it's good enough for Eidus, Rashiva uses it throughout Shas, he uses it for a lot of dinim, that you have a yediyah berura on certain things, which we're not getting into now, but there's a yediyah berura on certain things, mitzad the chazaka. So he says the famous Gemara, and Hayim and Beis, I'm talking to the guys that already learned all these Gemaras. The Gemara says there was somebody they were calling him Bar Armaisa. Let's see what the Gemara is exactly. Oh. No, it's the wrong Gemara. You're not talking to do soon? Maybe. Yeah. Hahud Avakara Bar Maisa. They were calling this guy that his mother was a guy. Omer Avasi Milo Tovel and Idusa. She was known in the neighborhood as a machzekes and Shaim Torah mitzvahs. So didn't she go to the mikveh? So big deal. She went to the mikveh. What does that do with anything? Fektaisis. Milo Tovel and Idusa. Tema. The Omer Kamon. The Ger Tzarech Shleisha. The Mishpah Ksivbe. So he brings down a Yesh Mefarshim. The Yesh Mefarshim say, I should have got a big one. Okay. The Yesh Mefarshim, the Kevin, the Yodua Lachol, Shetovla, Kilo Eindim Sham Dami. Since it's Yodua Lachol, Al Tzachazaka, that she's Machzekes and Torah mitzvahs, it's as if the Bezdin was standing there when she went to the mikveh. The Yediyah is like a Re'iyah. That's how Vaida goes. So, based on this, the Shiva comes out like this. When you go ahead and burn down the Godish that has Kalim inside, I mean, the fire broke out and it burned down the Kalim, the Godish has Kalim inside, there's a idea that Godish is full of the value of the Godish. That's it. It's burned down $100 value. Not because you see what's inside, but because you know what's inside. And again, you'll have to talk about the shivui of that value at least. But the rest of the stuff, the Maisa was Tamar. So now, says the Rosh Shiva, I'm going to prove to you that that's the way it works over here. Because you wouldn't believe where he comes from. He says, Yesh lo kelim tamunim eno kriya, the kelim okay, I mean him. The raya that this is the way it works, that the re'iyah is, the idea is just like a re'iyah, and memela it's not tomun. Guess what? The Rashi and Daf Nun Vav. Remember that Rashi? We had a Rashi and Daf Nun Vav that Rashi says that somebody else covered the kaim. In fact, the Shiva Shapi Rashi over there Pirish Al Hodam of As. He says it had to be the one that didn't make the fire. Like Rav Shmuel Lando asked, and like we asked, everybody was asking, even if the guy who made the fire covered it besadinim, Nami, it's Tomin at the end of the day. That's what should be. Says the Shiva, no, that's not true. It's exactly not true because of what I told you. The idea who Korea, the guy who covered it, there's the idea. He knows clear what's underneath those sheets. He has no ptur in Toman. It's not Toman. There's the idea, and Mamela, it's not Toman. The guy who made the fire covered it. Now, there are a few nakudas that we should speak about. Rather, I have to tell you, my nephew Reb Shlomo over here pointed out, Lav Dafka is the Yeshiva learning exactly what I told you, because the Yeshiva is not saying the chilek like I said necessarily between Kisoy and Tomum. He's saying a Shas Svarah. It's Nageya to every place. It's Nageya to any idea is like a Riyah. Mele, it has a lot more implications. I was just using it to explain why there's a Kisoy and there's a Kisoy and there's a thing called Tomum. But this goes a lot further. Maybe we don't have to go with, like I'm saying. But I do have another nakuda. What it sounds like here, we need a shtickle raya. The way I'm saying it, maybe the way Shiva says it, maybe we can get out of. It sounds like it's an individualized type of din toman. Lagabe you, it's toman. Lagabe him, it's not toman. So, do we have any rayas that's really the way to look at it? So, the emes is, in that same sheet that you have, the Ra'ah, he has the famous kasha. You might have bumped into it in the second parak with Rashi and Taisvis. What is a Gedi and Evet, Samach, or Kofov tied in this field doing in the middle of this Mishnah? This Mishnah starts off, Hamadik is Agodish, Vayabo Kalim Vidolko, Zamachloik is Ibihudan Hachamim, is in Toman or not. Comes along and then talks about Hoy Gedi Kofeslo, Evet Samachloi, and then it goes to Umaydim Chachamim. Umaydim Chacham maybe Yehuda Malikas Habiva Shemeshan Kumasha B'Seicha. So it's talking about Toman at the beginning. It's talking about Toman at the end. What's the middle doing there? Okay, so Rashi and Tyson, the second parak already handling. The Raw says, now again, you have to tell, you learned, oh, I'm going to try to bring it as a raya over here. The Raw says it has to do with Toman. Because we're talking about when the guy started the fire on this side, he didn't see the animals hiding behind the commas. Okay? So you would think it has a din Toman because when he's starting the fire, he doesn't see the thing over there. Kamash Malan, if anybody would be on the other side, if he would be on the other side, he'd be able to see. But if it's not individualized, then of course there are a lot of people on the other side. What does that make a Toman? Just because on the angle he's making the fire from, it's considered, it might be Toman. What's the Havamina? It's Goloi. It's out there. It's on the field. So maybe, Taka, you could see from there that there's such a thing as an individualized type of din Toman. Definitely the Rashiva is learning there's the idea. The idea to him is already, even though like everybody else it's Toman, there is the idea, but do we have any more Rishonim going back that to bring rayas from? But that's what it sounds like. There is such a thing as an individualized type din Toman. Okay. Shkayach Rabbi say.